Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. I hope you're ready to get your hands dirty because we've got an episode full of gorgeous greenery and backyard botanics. Let's get into it.
I've popped over to Melbourne to visit an inner city garden that's small on space but big on plants and style. The gardener behind it has transformed a challenging block into a productive patch, and it's filled with colour year-round.
Today, I'm giving you my top tips for bringing colourful, showy flowering plants indoors.
And one of my favourite summer gardening rituals is planting tomatoes. They're great performers, rewarding you with loads of fruit for your efforts. I'll show you how I grow them, and I'll be testing your tomato knowledge.
They've been evolving for hundreds of millions of years, adapting to many different climates and habitats, from swamps to rainforests, from deserts to mountaintops. I'm talking about ferns. Here at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney, I'll be shining a light on how these plants have become a big part of our ecosystem and what a beautiful addition they'd make to your garden or yard. Welcome to the wonderful world of ferns. With over 10,000 species of ferns worldwide, they're unbeatably versatile, with one to fit almost any niche in the garden. And the Botanic Gardens have a collection of over 350 species in their fernery and greenhouses. The most statuesque and common are the tree ferns, which can be found in almost any nursery. The Cyathea australis, or rough tree fern, is recognisable for its prickly hairs growing at the base of the fronds and the large round leaf scars on the trunk. If you're looking for something to fill a difficult spot in your garden, this will do the job. Don't be deceived by its refined symmetry and beautifully elegant fronds. This fern is extremely hardy, it tolerates direct sun, it'll survive a frost, and even works well in a pot. The soft tree fern, or Dicksonia antarctica, is less hardy than the Cyathea. It likes creek beds or wet forests and prefers shade over sun. However, it's a true graceful beauty with its large spreading fronds. It goes well in a garden, but you need to water well and mulch to retain moisture. Whoa. If you'd been evolving for more than 300 million years, I reckon you'd deserve to be called King Fern. This Angiopteris evecta is an Aussie native, and it has showy fronds that can reach between 2 and 7 metres. They love a shady spot and warm, wet habitat, and remarkably, these regal fronds are kept aloft by hydraulics. They create their own water pressure to raise a royal salute. Looking up into the canopy from our ground huggers, we've got the ever-popular epiphytic ferns, like elkhorns and staghorns. They grow on the trunks of rainforest trees up and down the coasts of New South Wales and Queensland. They stick to almost any surface and catch your eye from any point in any garden. They have these incredible pendulous fronds that drip down. They're a bit like antlers. And what I love about them, they start small. So the best thing you can do is get one going now, and you'll just see it over time come to life like this one. Although they're very tough, they don't like to be overwatered. If you want to give them a boost, then throw in some slow-release fertiliser or even a banana behind the shield fronds. While the Botanic Gardens fernery creates ideal growing conditions for subtropical ferns, behind the scenes, there are many truly tropical ones. Today, I've been given special access to take a look at some of the impressive species in the collection. The climate in here mimics the warm and moist habitats of northeast Queensland, where tropical ferns thrive. It's here where you'll find the fishtail fern, or Microsorum punctatum. I love this variety, labatum. With its shaggy, frilly, strappy leaves, it's really quite lush. Now, it's an epiphyte, but it will also grow in a hanging basket, and there's plenty of epiphytic soil mixes out there for you to choose from. One of the standouts of this collection is the particularly rare Drinaria mayernania. It's a stunning plant that's adapted to monsoonal conditions. So the key to growing them well is to allow the potting mix to get fairly dry in between watering. The more you look into plants, the more you can learn about their adaptations. In this case, this fern has two different types of fronds. The long, fertile fronds produce spores, but then there's the shorter, non-fertile fronds, and they play a really important role because during drought, all the fertile fronds fall off, but it leaves the non-fertile ones there to act like a wicket keeper and catch litter to help the plant survive the drought and then propagate again in the future. Millions of years of evolution have helped ferns thrive. So no matter where you are in the country, it's worth taking a closer look, doing a bit of homework, and finding one that's just right for you.
What's a good small growing plant that I can grow as an understory? Well, I think this one's hard to beat. It's called Ceratostigma plumbagioides, a very long name. Its common name is dwarfed plumbago. And it's a beauty because it's got these absolutely magnificent blue flowers from late summer through to autumn. It only grows about 30 centimetres high, and when it finishes flowering, you just get your secateurs or your clippers and clip, 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 clip it right back, and it'll shoot up again and keep on flowering. It's a beauty under the shade of things like this maple tree, and it's such a good plant.
Can I grow Sturt's desert pea at home? Well, Naringa, or Sturt's desert pea, can be grown at home. Although it can be slightly tricky, you will be rewarded with excellent blooms. Sow the seed directly, because they don't like transplanting. And the word desert is the giveaway, so hot, dry conditions with excellent drainage. You can grow them in an upright terracotta drain pipe if you have one. And once the seedling establishes, try not to overwater it.
What is an axil? An axil is where one part of the plant joins onto another. For example, it's where a leaf joins onto the stem, or where one stem joins onto a bigger stem or branch. Now, when we're pruning, what we try and do is prune quite close to the axil so that there's no dieback. And what you'll find is the plant will respond, that little bud there will become its new growth. But to be honest, with something as big as my carob hedge, I prune it with mechanical equipment and it doesn't cause a problem.
So many of us gardeners want everything, but the question is, how do we have it all, particularly in small spaces? Well, Hannah's found some gardeners who have turned a small space into something both productive and beautiful.
Judy Sederoff and husband Andreas live in Brunswick East in Melbourne, right next to Mary Creek. Like many people in the inner city, they only have a tiny garden. But this hasn't cramped their style one bit, because Judy has managed to squeeze in stacks of plants and loads of ideas into every inch of this garden. How would you describe your style of gardening to other people?
Oh, it's pretty eclectic, pretty crazy. It's all over the place. And I just collect plants. I'll see a plant and I love it. You know, I'll see it somewhere and go, I've got to have one of those. Or a friend will offer me a plant and I have to have it.
So how big is your garden, Judy?
I think it's 66 square metres, so it's quite small. And we've made the garden at the front of the site and we've backed the house up to the laneway so that there is no garden at the back. We've actually built on the boundary.
And why have you put certain plants in particular areas of your garden?
The main thing is to take advantage of the really good soil on this side of the garden. We planted things that we didn't have to plant in pots. And we have quite deep, productive soil here, which we've nurtured and added compost and mulch, but it really was pretty good to begin with. Whereas this side of the garden is really all on rock, so it's had to be built above the ground.
But there's a lot of colour here, which I'm loving. Is that something you've really tried hard to achieve?
Yeah, I guess because it's my, design background, working on interiors, I just love colour and I'm always changing the colour palettes and getting it to work together.
Judy and Andreas have been designing sustainable houses for 30 years. They built their own about a decade ago and have aimed to make it as light on the land as possible. What makes the design of this house really sustainable?
It's the way you put it together. The 4 critical elements are glass, mass, insulation and, most importantly, orientation. We chose this block because the house faces north, which is the optimum angle for sustainable building design, often called passive design. The critical component is to have super insulation. My ceiling, for example, has 2 feet of insulation in it. The standard normally asks for about 6 or 7 inches or so. And the glazing is your weakest component thermally, so that's why everything in here is double or triple glazed. The 4th component is thermal mass. And to get this house to 9.5 star, we had to provide way more concrete or brickwork than this house was planned for.
The sustainable principles that underpin the house can also be found out in the garden.
Well, we've used things like not having any hard surfaces so that the land absorbs the moisture and it doesn't heat up the building. We've used a lot of recycled materials. The timber is Cypress macrocarpa that's used on the wicking beds and all the raised beds, which is very sustainable timber. We used a lot of recycled elements like the baskets are old grape baskets from the vineyard days, which we've lined with hessian and grown things in them.
How has water played a role in creating a sustainable landscape?
Well, we have 2 squat rainwater tanks underneath the deck here that are connected with a pump. They collect rainwater from the roof. We use that a lot in summer, not so much in winter because we don't have to water much in winter. Over here we have a point, it's connected to a 3rd pipe to the house, which collects all the grey water from the showers and washing machines.
And I noticed looking around, there's no bare ground here, is there?
No, well that was one of the things, is to plant heavily so it keeps weeds down. They also provide quite a lot more moisture to the site. So I mulch, but I don't have to weed very often.
That's clever. It's clever gardening. Of course, it's the productive side of the garden that really gets me excited.
Everything in this area of the garden's pretty much edible, even the flowers. Things like nasturtiums and marigolds and violas. This is all my salad greens and herbs. And in summer I can grow some of the bigger veggies like eggplants and tomatoes. Over winter that's more low-growing brassicas and herbs.
But even though there's a lot of low stuff, you've got some great little tent structures and you're utilising the shed wall to grow up.
Yes, yeah.
Now, you've got some great raised beds here, but they're wicking beds.
They are. Andreas built these for me. They're really high-functioning wicking beds. They store a lot of the moisture and it wicks up in the soil. I just have to put a light sprinkling of water on top when I'm growing seeds, but mostly the vegetables root down quite well.
I notice your interior design skills are making themselves known in your garden as well.
Yes, well, I do collect things like these are all from op shops, and there's quite a bit of stuff from hard rubbish. The mirrors are collected from hard rubbish on the streets. And I've collected all these little ornaments over time from all sorts of places, travels, op shops, old chandelier pieces.
I think it's so wonderful. They're beautiful all year round. And I think in a temperate garden, when a lot of plants are losing their leaves, having those kinds of elements just help hold a garden together.
Yes, that's
visually,
probably what I've felt, yeah.
It's visually stunning.
I do it innately. I don't think about it that much.
Like
People say, where'd you get that idea? And I'm just like, I just picked it up. It was on the street and I thought that looked good.
Yeah. Even though it's a small space, there's more than enough happening year-round to keep Judy actively planting, improving and making the most of her little, productive inner-city sanctuary.
I think it's a connection with the earth that, to me, it really grounds me because I can get a bit, you know, in my head, and so it's very soothing.
We most often grow our indoor plants for their ornamental foliage, and there's a good reason. They tolerate much lower light levels than their sun-thirsty flowering counterparts. But we don't have to miss out. Today, I'm giving you my top tips for bringing colourful, showy flowering plants indoors. The Phalaenopsis orchid blooms once or twice a year with flowers that last for months at a time. But don't feel rejected when the flowers start falling off. Your blooming romance can definitely be revived and nurtured. To revitalise a Phalaenopsis flower, I recommend cutting the stem back to the second or third node, and this will trigger the plant to sprout a brand new flower spike. Phals are epiphytic, which means they have adapted to rugged growing conditions and very free drainage, so pot them up using a specialist mix with big chunks. And fertilising every fortnight over the warmer months with a weak dose of specialty orchid feed will encourage more flowers and healthy roots. They like bright, indirect light and a warm, humid spot, and will be blooming for years to come. My second recommendation is the wonderful bromeliad, which produces long-lasting flowers from the centre of their rosettes. They make a great low-maintenance indoor plant, don't require much sun and only need the occasional water. I really love them for their dazzling foliage. However, the flowers are very striking and a bit alien looking. And with their fluorescent shades of pink, magenta and neon purple, they are truly a unique addition to your home. Most bromeliads flower just once, with the plant surviving only a year or two afterwards. However, during this time, pups or plantlets start to form near the base of the rosette, and these can be detached to form new plants. Bromeliads are epiphytes and need a free draining mix when grown in a pot. Fertilise with a weak liquid feed to keep the plant happy and healthy. Anthuriums have long been one of my favourite indoor plants, and they are among the longest bloomers of all. Their dazzling colours and big fancy leaves are all the rage right now. I go for the old school flamingo flower types. Anthurium is a Greek word meaning tail flower, and this is due to the tiny flowers arranged round a fleshy tail-like spadix, or spike. It is protected by a spade that can be bright red, hot pink, or even lilac and peach. They need medium to bright light or they won't bloom, so put them near a sunny window, avoiding harsh, direct sunlight. Just make sure to grow them in a well-draining orchid bark mix. They like to be moist, but not soggy. And finally, Hoyas. They'll flower in the warmer months if you give them at least half a day of bright or dappled light. We often grow them in the shade and wonder why they won't bloom. Some species can take years to reach reproductive age, so if it's not happening, you may have one that's too young. When you do get them to flower, they have stunning bunches of unusual waxy pink, white or yellow blooms that are fun to watch unfurl. They also have a really strong scent, so expect your lounge room to be thick with fragrance. Most Hoyas are epiphytes, so use a free draining mix and don't pot up again until they're bursting out of the pot. To keep the flowers coming, apply a controlled release fertiliser over the warmer spring and summer months. We can all do with a bit of eye candy in our homes now and again. So why not invite some dashes of colour so you can appreciate each day the power of the flower.
I think one of the best things about Gardening Australia is that we get to go beyond the front fence into the home gardens of some of the best designers, experts and plants people all around the country. Jerry's introducing us to a botanist and green infrastructure specialist who's busy turning his Brisbane backyard into a living laboratory.
Professionals in the horticulture arena often turn their hands to projects that challenge on a large scale. Vertical gardens, green facades, roof garden technologies and the like. One such professional is botanist Eric van Zylicom. How would you describe what you do?
My role is to bridge the gap between botany, horticulture and ecology. I design living architecture systems, and those are technologies that are applied to buildings. I pretty much take plants and put them on buildings, on structure. And what that means is my job is to find plants and ecologies that will work well in the urban sphere. I'm drawing on species from niche environments, niche ecologies. They haven't been studied, there's very little data, and so I have to conduct a lot of that research myself.
Eric has continued that research after moving from Melbourne to Brisbane with his family 2 years ago. And over the last 2 years, Eric's been experimenting, growing new plants for his innovative work in his own backyard.
Well, Jerry, this is an example of one of the pioneer canopy species we're working with. It's a very rapid-growing Brazilian fern tree, Schizolobum parahybra, and this was planted by seed 2 years ago. Wow. Remarkable growth. It's got the largest compound leaf of any tree, and the idea is for it to quickly ascend, produce shade for the trees below, but also to be a host for our aroids.
So what are you learning about these philodendrons?
Well, the first thing is I'm exercising reading a plant. And in this case, we've got a great example of a plant with leaves that are heavily fenestrated, meaning they've got big gaps between them, and that tells you that it most likely is trying to conserve moisture. So it possibly comes from a very dry environment or low humidity environment. The trunk thickens as it climbs up. But what's happening here is that the exposures are talking to the plant's genetics and stimulating it to conserve a bit of moisture for in case there's a dry period. But because it's in the shade, it doesn't feel too stressed. It doesn't have to go too far with being succulent. So in this case, it's putting on a lot of vertical growth, but retaining quite a thin trunk. Here, Jerry, we have exactly the same species grown in dramatically different environments. The exposures are higher, full sun, and higher wind. As you can see from the base, all the way up, it's grown and thickened dramatically, become very succulent. And that'll allow the plant, when it goes deciduous, through a dry winter where it comes from, that it can survive those periods of stress.
So what this is telling me as a gardener is that in this one plant, standard care does not really apply. In fact, this would do really well in dry temperate Perth, as it does here in subtropical Brisbane. It's really adaptable.
It certainly is. Well, Jerry, this is the next chapter in our story. It's the long-term goal. We're going to be establishing an edible rainforest here. We're modelling it on how a rainforest naturally evolves. So we've got pioneer species, frontline species that will grow really rapidly and produce protective open canopy that allows a lot of light through, and then a secondary canopy of slower growing emerging species that are our fruiting species. And the idea behind this is not only is it going to help feed the family, it's going to host my botanical collections, my research plants.
And another corner of this botanist's playpen holds more areas for experimentation. So what do we have here?
Jerry, we've got 3 shade houses. They house my research plant collections. I'd like to remind you that they're not prettified collections. They are hardcore research, but we've got one that I can control humidity, one that I can introduce plants to ambient conditions, and then the third one is my too hard basket, where work and life get in the way and it overflows into that one.
Can we have a look?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
The important thing for me here is to deliberately stress plants, to push them to their outer parameters, their outer tolerances, and to observe how they respond in a closed environment like this. My job is to observe these plants in habitat and to find ways to translate what I see happening in rainforests into living architecture projects.
So there's an awful lot going on just in this one space.
And the plants themselves are changing the conditions for how their partner plants next to them also grow.
And you're keeping records of all this as you go.
Absolutely. All the competition, all the heats and stresses.
Wow. But it's not all work and no play. Eric still finds time to tend their family veggie patch.
This is what we use to feed the family. As you can see, we have quite a few different plants, herbs and vegetables, as well as flowering beneficials.
So how was the gear shift coming from cool temperate Melbourne to subtropical Brisbane?
It was quite a gear shift, but a pleasurable one at that. We got to discover new foods, new herbs and spices, tropical and Asian foods that we really enjoy too. We expanded our food palette that we eat, and one great example is this moringa. I grow it as a hedge to stop the wind racking through the garden, but we're also able to just simply pull the leaves. We can eat it fresh, put it into pestos, or we dehydrate it. And we discovered you can eat green bananas. And not only that, we use them as a soil builder through our gardens as well.
Brilliant. Eric, your garden is just 2 years young, and yet it's a testament to your ability to read the climate and to read your plants.
Thank you. I think one of the important things is to remember that what's on the label is important, but to peer beyond that, to look at the life story of the plants behind it. And when you understand that story, then it certainly simplifies gardening and makes it a lot easier to apply them.
Well, I just think it's wonderful to meet somebody who practices what he preaches and who leads by example.
Thank you so much.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Josh takes up a trivial tomato pursuit. Millie visits a group who are strengthening the links between plants, culture and country. And we meet a chef who turned to the garden to grow mouth-watering ingredients.
If you live in the cooler parts of the country, you'll know just how beautiful a Japanese maple can be. They come in all different colours and the leaf shapes are beautiful. This is a dissected maple. You can see each leaf is beautifully crafted. Just a glorious sight. The only thing is, with the new growth, you should watch out for these little creatures here. They're aphid and they're just going to suck the sap out of all of that new growth. So just get your tissue and just squish them, and that'll easily get rid of them, and you won't have to spray, but it will make all the difference to the tips of your maple leaves.
For a lot of gardeners around the country, this time of year is the main event. Everything's been working towards this moment, to give it your all and leave everything you've got out there on the field. Well, seasoned strategist Josh is here with all the tips, tricks and trivia to make sure your tomatoes are up there on the winner's board.
I'm prepping this bed by working in some compost and organic fertiliser. The spring sun is shining in my veggie patch, and that means one thing: tomatoes. Yeah, look, I know you tomato experts that tomatoes are a fruit and not a veggie, but you'll be glad to know that later on I'll be grilling you and testing your tomato knowledge. The varieties I've chosen are indeterminate, meaning they're climbing vine types that will fruit continuously throughout the season as they grow, and they need a good sturdy frame, around 2 metres high. If you're short of space, you might want to try determinate varieties, which grow more as a bush and are perfect for pots. Like a lot of gardening tasks, it's one that I repeat every year. But that's one of the things that I really love about gardening. It's the seasonality of it and the rhythm of jobs that come with each season. OK, tomato enthusiasts, it's pop quiz time. From which culture did the English word for tomato originate? That's right, the Aztecs. As the tomato plants grow, I'll be tying the stems to the frame with natural twine, keeping it fairly loose to leave room for the stems to thicken up. I've chosen 2 tomato varieties. Actually, they're varieties that I keep going back to time and time again because my family loves them. This one's groslis, which literally translates into large and smooth. They're great for sandwiches, and we use the surplus fruit for making sauce. This one's Tommy Toe. It produces masses of small fruit, but they're super sweet. Great for salads, and also we put them in the kids' lunchboxes. OK, tomato experts. If the edible berry of Solanum lycopersicum is the tomato, what is the English translation for lycopersicum? You got it! Wolf peach. Tomatoes are vigorous, high-yielding plants, but there are some basics to keep in mind when growing them. Firstly, the plants need at least 6 hours of full sun each day. Space them about 1 metre apart so they get plenty of light and air movement around them. Congested plants are more likely to succumb to pests and disease. The Tommy Toes are particularly vigorous, so I use 2 poles so there's plenty of points to tie to, while the groslis works well on 1. Don't plant tomatoes in the same spot each year. Ideally, allow at least 2 seasons between planting, where either tomatoes or their relatives like eggplants, capsicums, chilies or potatoes have been planted, as they share common diseases. And plant them a little deeper than you otherwise might. You would have seen me pinching off these bottom leaves, and that's because roots will grow from this stem once it's buried in the soil, resulting in stronger plants. OK, tomato lovers, do you know why Europeans originally thought that tomatoes were ornamental? Yes, because they thought tomatoes were poisonous. Mulching is a must to keep the root zone cool and moist in hot weather. They'll need regular watering and liquid feeding every 2 to 3 weeks, plus a monthly side dressing of potash to improve fruit quantity and quality. Once the main harvest is over, pull the plants out and compost them. In areas with mild winters, like Perth, the plants can carry through, but they'll never be as productive as that first season, and they're more likely to end up diseased. Instead, start afresh in spring. And honestly, as gardeners, building up the soil, setting up frames like this and planting tomatoes, well, it's a ritual. And summer wouldn't be the same without it.
This plant is the Guelder rose or snowball tree, and it produces the most interesting flowers that start off pale green and actually end up white, hence the name snowball. It's a large shrub or small tree which is deciduous, so no leaves over winter, these beautiful flowers in spring going into summer, and then stunning autumn colour. So a winner in spring in your garden.
For First Nations people in this country, plants are a vital link to their living culture. They're not only food and medicine, but they're central to language, material technology and ceremony, which brings people together. Millie's visiting a nursery and gathering space that's growing connections for the local community.
It's hard to believe, but hidden amongst this industrial landscape is a nursery specialising in local Indigenous plants. It's operated by the Willamaraine Aboriginal Association on Bunurong and Boonwurrung country here in Hastings on the Mornington Peninsula. The nursery is part of a 2-hectare site which offers a safe cultural space for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and provides cultural education for the wider community. Today, the women's group is meeting for ceremony, led by Yarran Elder Auntie Jen Armistead.
We acknowledge our elders past, our current elders and our emerging elders as they give us hope from the past to the present to the future. This is like a gathering place. We get together, there's no difference. We're all the same people.
and it's a place of welcoming and of comfort, and it gives us sort of peace of mind. Like when we walk in through the gates, all the rubbish is left outside.
Founding member and CEO Peter Oldenhoven is a Quandamooka man who's lived in Victoria all his life. He's been here since it started in 2014.
We have community members who identify as Bunurong and Bunwurrung, but really 99% of our members are Aboriginal diaspora from across Australia. So, you know, we celebrate our cultural diversity.
And what role do plants play in that?
Traditionally, we would have been grown up on our own countries, and our aunties would have taken us out when we were young children, and we would have learned about all the plants, all the story and meaning and all their uses. So here we are in contemporary Australia living on Bunurong country, and we're learning about the country, the plants from this country. It's just part of us recapturing, I guess, the loss of traditional knowledge.
Oh, a bit of seed collection.
Yeah, doing some seed collection there on the Gilwinia. Yes, yeah. So this plant, Geelwak in Bunurong language, is a really important plant, Millie. It's a fire stick plant. It's the premium fire stick plant for Kooris. So if you want to light a fire, this is the plant you needed to have.
So you'd use these sticks to... it's so straight, isn't it?
It's a very hard timber when it's dried out.
Yep.
And the friction at the base, when rubbed into split grass tree flowers, would generate embers and fire. So if you had a stick of this in your back pocket, walking along, you could light a fire.
This is a special plant for you, isn't it?
Yeah, kangaroo grass, or Buathgaim in Bunurong language. It's a beautiful grass, you know, and but I think it tells a really interesting story. Here's a grass that originally occurred widely across Australia, 2/3 of the continent, desert areas, not up the top end, but certainly southeastern Australia, and in many areas it was removed and replaced with ryegrass, which, as you know, Millie, just dies out over summer and, you know, farmers make hay. I think about Dust Bowl farms and skeletal cattle in the midst of drought, and there's nothing there at all, and I think, wow, you should have left this beautiful grass, which stays green, you know, all summer. The driest continent on Earth, that's its growing period, summer.
That's the beautiful thing about so many native grasses is they're summer active. They don't want to burn in summer the way many of our exotic grasses do.
Yes, yeah, that's another element to it, isn't it? So we could do worse than grow this plant, you know, to bring it back all over the countryside. And it's a beautiful garden plant in its own right, you know, the russet colours, the grey-green colours, yeah.
All these plants are grown in the bush nursery and are exclusively from the Mornington Peninsula.
A lot of these plants are used more widely across southeast Australia traditionally by Kooris, etc. And in learning about these plants and learning the ways to grow them, all the challenges of cultivation, you know, it's been an exciting journey.
I noticed that you have language names and beautiful artworks all around the nursery. I'm assuming it's a wider educational role that this nursery is performing.
So obviously we want to sell plants. We're a nursery, you know, and create employment opportunities for mob, but really we're about sharing cultural knowledge and the story and meaning behind plants. Anything that encourages people to plant plants from country is what we're trying to achieve.
Willam employ 20 people, with 7 of the staff working in the bush nursery, including cultural tour guide Palawa woman Justine Leonard.
Knowing that every single one of these babies is going back out on country is amazing. That's probably the best part of my day. And then going out and seeing them on country, once we've met them, seeing them out on country, and I talk to them. I speak to them, I tell them their names in language too. I feel like they haven't heard it for so long, so they need to.
I think everyone who loves plants, I don't think anyone would not talk to them when they think no one else is listening.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they talk to us.
They do talk to us, and they listen, and they talk back too.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
As well as growing plants for the public, the nursery are also involved in revegetation, rehabilitating sites on roadsides and creating wetlands.
This is our Punpun area here, which means ephemeral wetland in Bunurong.
Punpun.
Punpun, yes, Punpun. This area was created when we first moved in. The property was an old Shire roadfill dump site, and the material was just bulldozed flat, and that caused water to sheet down here at the back of the property, and it'd be waist deep. Every winter it'd be waist deep in water, so we decided to put in 3 little punpuns, and I'm going to show them to you now, Millie.
And these are a lot of the plant species that you grow in the nursery?
Yes, yes. So a lot of these plants are local aquatic plants.
And the Kumbunji, that's such a beautiful plant. I mean, I know it's dominant in the landscape in some places, but it's so beautiful and so useful.
So useful, yes. As a food, and you can make spears out of it, men's business. You see the flower heads there at the moment. They're useful for staunching wounds if you get injured, like Aboriginal first aid kit. This is our deepest pond. Even though it's got that surface aquatic plant, I can tell you, if you fell in there, it's well and truly over your head. You'd be in amongst the eels.
Wow. And what's this pond over here?
So over here we've got our frog bog. We have 6 species of frogs. They've all been through their tadpole cycle. The last one was pobblebonk, and they've moved out. So if you went searching amongst all this grassy area, you would find some little creatures bouncing around.
And this one, a whole another group of inhabitants.
Yeah, so this is our Galaxia, our fish pond, if you like, and, you know, you provide a little opportunity for plants and animals and birds and fish, and they come back, yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, the nursery's giving that opportunity for people to do that at home, to plant some local species. But it must feel amazing to walk out of your propagating house and be able to see this formerly just ruined site starting to come back to life.
Yeah, and from an Aboriginal perspective, we, you know, we often talk about healing country, and we believe that in healing country, like we've done here with these punpuns, that we're also healing ourselves.
It's sort of a softening of the heart when you come here. Like, I was down here for years, a lost soul, you know, sort of. And then I was introduced to Willem, and it was like sugar bag taken off my back. You know, the weight and everything just disappeared, and I was welcomed in a way that I wish everybody could be welcomed no matter where they go. And Willem is that sort of place. You don't fit in anywhere else, you'll fit in here because we'll make sure you do.
There's a strong link between the garden and the kitchen in so many of our homes. Nothing like sitting down to eat something that you've grown yourself. But what about next-level food, where produce is used to excite, delight and inspire? The best way to get your hands on some great ingredients is to grow it yourself. And our next story is with someone doing just that.
Food has a very, very significant meaning in my family. We show our love and care through food. We celebrate with food, we comfort with food, we nourish each other with food. My name is Fiat Millennium. I was born in Bangkok. My parents encouraging me to learn and to develop a love and passion in the things that I want to do. My mom, she opened a little restaurant at home, and then we opened another one with my grandmother. I was very fortunate to be able to learn from her towards the end of her life. I came over to Australia. I feel like Sydney is truly is like my home.
It's like got a nice little texture to it.
Yeah.
It's good.
I met Anthony when I'm one of the lowest point of my life, and you know, We complement each other. We are completely opposite in every single way. We met on the bus, actually. It's probably a curse, maybe, or a blessing. I'm not sure for Anthony. But here we are, almost 25 years after.
He's very passionate in what he does, and I see that with all the creations that he puts on the table, and even with from farm to plate. It's amazing.
I come to realize that when I came here in the late 90s, there actually haven't been any quality Asian ingredient or anything. As a matter of fact, people use tin stuff and frozen stuff most of the time. We live in such a huge country, such a fertile country, where there are so many type of climates that you can grow anything. I realized that what I really, really want to do is to have my own little food business, like my family had in Thailand, and I want to continue to do that, and I've been doing that ever since. There's a tight knit of a restaurateur and the top chefs. It was termed back then, what we do is a chef's secret. And so I'm starting to send my produce to Melbourne, to Perth, to everywhere.
The plot that we have on this farm at Pete's Ridge is about 300 square metres. To actually maintain it is a lot of work for just 1.5 persons. I help feed out as often as I can, besides my full-time job. I only grow things that I love, to grow and explore the boundaries as well what we can do here. So mostly traditional and rare varieties. This is the Thai orange turmeric, Thai baby corn, curry leaves over there, shakakai leaf is like a sour tamarind leaves, cumin basil. And over here is all the Thai eggplant, probably about 4 different varieties of the eggplants. Good to see you. Thank you. And a Tamarillo for you. With a crisper.
Beer's here every month, and the customers that come with him as well, they're so lovely. It's just a completely different quality of product. The product is way better than what you would ever get in a supermarket, and that's what everyone really wants.
I season it to authentic taste, so it's quite intense.
Okay,
That's one
perfect.
bit of meat.
Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll just get a couple of these.
This one is the curry pack, so whatever produce is best for that day, I put them together. This one is a stir-fry pack. A similar concept, different type of dish. My customer, fortunately, they love what I do, and they find it very, very exciting. I mean, it's exciting for me, too. Here you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Almost everything he grows is unique. Fiat's taught me so much about the foods that he's grown and how to use them in my cooking, which is why I continue to come back to him.
It's raspberry, vanilla, and calamansi lime marshmallows.
It's not too sweet, like most marshmallows, and it's so much softer.
Yeah. We decorate it with edible flowers, also grown at the farm and our kitchen garden. So the elderflowers and damask rose. This is edible flowers called hummingbird flower. It's a type of legume which provide protection from frost for the heirloom chilies that are growing underneath. And this one's quite interesting. It's a Japanese rainbow corn. We're really lucky that it's actually producing crop this time. At the moment, it's hard to pin my favorite. I have quite a few, but yuzu is always the top of my list. To me, it's a combination of like very fragrant citrus. So it's more than the orange. It's a little bit lemony, but more like kind of orange mandarin kind of thing. It's very unusual flavor profile and the fragrance in which you can't find a match anywhere. It's just a combination of all different types of citrus. Tamarillo, we're growing 2 varieties here, which is the orange one and the red one. It's also called the tree tomatoes. It's in the same family as nightshade, like potato and tomato, obviously. It's a citrusy, aromatic, sweet and sour taste.
probably the most impressive part for myself is the actual bananas. We started off with just one tree of bananas, and it was a little shrub. Now we've got at least 6 to 7 hands of bananas growing all year round. So it's a big thing. The soil up here is amazing, and it's just phenomenal of stuff that can actually grow in this soil.
Yacon is one of my experimental crops. This is probably our 3rd or 4th years. It's a tuber underneath the ground. We grow it all year round. It looks like sweet potato, but it tastes like crunchy jicama or yam bean or water chestnut. It's really, really good for diabetes. It's low GI as well, and so that kind of use as substitute.
Is it sweet yet?
It is, actually. I like it.
Most of everything that I'm used for my cooking today come from the garden, from the Thai pumpkin, which is in season at the moment. All the curry paste is made from the ginger we have here as well, and we use in the heirloom chilies. And then for the pickle, I use the rare Thai white turmeric with young ginger and Thai aromatics like kaffir limes, lemongrass, and young galangal.
Everything that he actually plates up, so lovely.
It's very kind of him.
I've never had one bad meal, and that's honest.
I feel humble and grateful that in some small way, I'm contributing to the food industry by making this produce available. And hopefully we'll be able to continue my family tradition by cooking and sharing food for everybody.
Time to put down your trowel and pick up your pencil and paper, because your list of jobs for the weekend has just arrived. In cool areas, take a tiptoe through the stunning tulip displays on show now. To avoid droopy flower heads, keep bulbs hydrated by watering well, especially before and after a cold snap. For an early summer carrot crop, mix carrot seeds with sand in a jar and sprinkle directly into loose, fluffy soil. The sand will reduce the need to thin seedlings and provide adequate drainage. The towering Tasmanian bluegum is in flower and can be planted out now. Luckily, these 70-metre tall floral emblems come in a backyard size. The compactor, dwarf variety, reaches only 7 metres. In warm areas, whip up a mix of white oil to use as an organic barrier to pests. Add 2 parts sunflower oil with 1 part Castile soap, shake and label. Add a tablespoon of this concentrate to water and spray fortnightly. Wisteria should be looking wonderful at this time of year. Feed now with high potassium fertiliser and maintain adequate water, as dry soil can cause buds to drop before blooming. Plant out some rainbow chard for added colour in your life. They grow quite tall, so plant at 30cm spacing into mounded soil. Regular harvesting will promote growth and yield a better crop. In subtropical areas, collect eggplant seeds. Blend mature fruit in a mixer at low speed with lots of water to release seeds from the flesh. Strain seeds and lay on newspaper to dry out completely before storing in a jar. Get your PPE on and sink those stinky stink bugs by shaking branches into hot soapy water. Young bugs are green before they turn their famous bronze orange colour, so get in now before they start breeding. Why not slip in some snake beans? Climbers are great if you want to stand up while you harvest. Sow seeds 5 centimetres deep into rich, well-dug soil for best results. Mulch once seedlings sprout. In tropical areas, sapote, known for its cream caramel flavour, is at the end of the harvest. Edible fruits will be brilliant yellow, but dark gold-coloured fruits should be removed to encourage the next flush. Trim fronds and dead branches from your trees and lay them down as surface mulch. The trim will stimulate growth on your plants, and it'll also provide free erosion and evaporation control. It's a win-win. Try a hybrid capsicum at home. Release pollen with a tap or the buzz of a tuning fork. Use a cotton tip to transfer it to the flower of a different capsicum variety, or try crossing it with a chilli. In arid areas, get your sweet tooth going and grow sweet potatoes. Slips can be grown in a cup of water and planted out in the ground or in pots. Add organic fertiliser now and monthly to boost your harvest. Give Gandana a go. Also known as Afghani leek, this perennial is super hardy and has a flavour somewhere between leek and chives. Plant seeds in full sun and water daily until they sprout. Surge up the strength of your spring onion production with a feed of potassium. Potassium is labelled K on multi-purpose fertilisers, or you can buy it straight as powder or pellets. Well, we hope that gets you pumped up for your time in the garden this week. Remember, you can always check out our stories from gardens across Australia on ABC iView and our YouTube channel. Well, we're done for another episode, and I know that's going to inspire you to get out there this weekend. Here's what we've got lined up for next time.
I'm going to be talking about insect pests and specifically fungus gnats. Whoa, what they are and how to get rid of them.
Clarence is going back to school to meet some students who are growing their skills in science through their pumping garden. And we take a moment to reminisce with our old friend Tino, revisiting one of Australia's most inspiring gardens and gardening families.